There's a lot of wildlife that live in the forest. Some of the wildlife is dangerous, and some could even be deadly. Others are less so. Learning to identify the difference between the animals that are going to cause you problems and those that won't takes a lot of experience. Dating these days, or interacting with women in a relationship, can be a lot like walking in the forest. And today, I want to talk about how we can identify threats and how to avoid them. The wildlife I'm referring to are unhinged women. And being able to identify an unhinged woman may just save your life. So I'm going to pick the most obvious one first, and this is one that probably you guys have always suspected, but I did a little research, and as it turns out, about 27% of American women are in some way being treated for some form of mental illness within the last 12 months. And that includes things like depression and anxiety, as well as a myriad of other kinds of mental illnesses. Now, I'm not taking a shot at mental illness, but if you're out there and you're meeting women, or perhaps you're even in a relationship with a woman, you probably need to be aware that there's a pretty good chance that you're dealing with someone who has some emotional instability and is being treated for it. So you definitely want to keep your eyes open and be aware of that. Depression and anxiety can appear to be almost bipolar at times. I mean, it can be very, very common that people experiencing those things are going through very difficult times. So you don't want that in your life. Be sure to stay to the end, because I'm going to give you a full rundown on how you can protect yourself from these unhinged women. You have some natural defenses that are invaluable if you just know how to employ them. Typically, an unhinged woman can be identified by her self-centeredness. Unhinged women put themselves ahead of all other people. They probably are going to lack some empathy, might have some narcissistic tendencies. They are going to feel like they're the center of the universe, and they're going to expect you to treat them accordingly. The next one, number 3, is unhinged women like to be in charge, but at the same time, they want a man who's strong and can lead. And of course, this creates an impossible situation, because you can only have one leader in an organization. In a relationship, although a small organization, is definitely an organization. And someone has to be taking the lead. And you can't have the woman taking the lead if she's expecting the man to be in charge. So that's a definite giveaway. And you'll notice it right away, because she'll be wanting to make all the plans, but then she'll be angry at you because you didn't plan anything. You just can't win. That's just one of those things. An unhinged woman tries to avoid accountability. She doesn't want to be held to an obligation or a commitment. When we make a vow as a man, living in a masculine environment, we take our oaths and our obligations extremely seriously. That's why a man can be put into a position where he has to, for example, guard a post, and he will give his life living up to that duty that he is committed to. A woman won't do that. And women, or especially an unhinged woman, but generally speaking, women are much less likely to live by a commitment in that way. And that's why it's so easy for them to get out of a marriage, because they feel like it's a conditional thing. And if they're not happy, the conditions aren't being met, and so they no longer have to live up to their end of the bargain. The next one is very similar, and that's values. You'll notice with an unhinged woman that her values will change very, very quickly, depending on what's going on outside of her, what's going on in the world, what's going on with her friends, her family, what's going on social media. Values will, they're more like preferences more than values. And an unhinged woman will not live by a set of values. An unhinged woman will make irrational arguments, or she will turn what you bring to her as a rational argument into something that's irrational. You can identify this very quickly because it'll soon turn into how this whole experience is making her feel. She will not accept responsibility for anything that she has done. She'll be more angry at you for making her feel bad, for her having done something that was bad, that will lead you to apologizing for her having done something wrong. Does that make sense? I mean, think about it. I'm sure you can identify that in some kind of relationship or conversation you've had with a woman. It's inevitable. I've had it happen to me hundreds of times where she does something wrong, I point it out, she gets upset with me because she doesn't feel good about the way I'm talking to her or about the way I expressed it or whatever. Next thing you know, I'm apologizing to her for something that I said when she was the one that actually did something stupid to begin with. That's a typical unhinged woman tactic. So let's talk about unhinged women and their emotions. And this is sort of a two-part answer. The first one is their emotions swing wildly and without warning. So just be aware of that. 1 minute they seem perfectly fine. You come back an hour later and it's like the world is coming to an end. You come back an hour later and they're on top of the world. You come back an hour later and they're angry at you for something that you have no idea what it's about. They're just not talking to you anymore. Don't know what that's about. I think it has something to do with their emotional radar, and that's the next one. So they have this acute sense of emotional, perception, and it's like they have this 500-mile radar, and it's always on. But it picks up all these false returns. It could be a flock of birds, and their radar picks it up and thinks it's a threat. Your radar, as a man, works at a much more conventional level, more like 100 miles out. So when a threat is near, you are aware of it, and you actually take action. But when their radar triggers them, they take action at the silliest, dumbest, stupidest thing you can imagine. And they will assume that it's a threat, when really it was just a coincidental event that happened to happen when they were nearby. And it has nothing to do with them whatsoever. But they will take it personally. They'll be upset with you because you were there when it happened. And there's no winning with that. That's a key sign of an unhinged woman. Unhinged women are threatened by other women, especially very attractive women. Women that they perceive might be more attractive than they are, especially when you have a relationship with them. So that'll make it impossible for you to have a relationship with any of your old friends who happen to have really attractive wives. Be aware of that. That kind of behavior is not healthy, it's not natural, and it's a sign that your woman is completely unhinged. And finally, the most important one, and this is the one that probably overrides all the others. And this is the critical one that you can watch for. And as soon as you see it, you know you're in the wrong relationship. An unhinged woman will always be looking for something outside of herself to make her happy. It's that good old external locus of control. Now, men suffer from this too, but women seem to be particularly vulnerable to this external locus of control because they're constantly watching for other people's reactions to them. So much of their lives, for whatever reason, have been focused on what other people think of them. Are they pretty? Are they not pretty? Are they smart? Are they not smart? Whatever. They're always looking for someone to tell them whether they're good or they're not good. And if your woman is looking for that kind of validation from you or from anyone else, you need to run away, because that is a sign of an unhinged woman. Now, all of these characteristics have a certain amount of variability. So you may find that you have a woman who has some of these characteristics, but not all of them. Or perhaps she has little bits of some of them, but not very much of them. So you gotta kind of have a sliding scale, if you will, where you're gonna have maybe at the low end a 1 or a 2, and at the high end a 10. If you get a 10 on 2 or 3 of these things, you need to run. If you see a lot of 1s, let's say you got 10 with a 1 or a 2, again, probably you ought to run. I don't know, maybe you ought to set like a flat number, like a 15 or a 20, and once they hit that score, that's sort of your bailout point. All right, so I promised you earlier that we would talk about what your ability is to manage these people. Because when they come into your life, if you haven't picked up on the early signs and you're stuck with one of these women in your life now, it's something that you're going to have to alter. You're going to have to change that relationship quickly. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in a nightmare before you know it. Here is your self-defense. Men have always had this incredible ability to compartmentalize. So when you get into a relationship with a woman, at the beginning, and maybe even throughout much of the relationship, you're going to have to compartmentalize a lot of your feelings and emotions towards her. You cannot allow yourself to express a sense of more affection toward her or love toward her, no adoration toward her, or more adoration toward her than she's giving to you. Let her be the one who expresses all the adoration. Let her be the one who expresses all the love. Let her be the hunter and you be the prey. And you're always moving just before that shot gets fired. Do you know what I mean? Don't let her get close enough to take a shot. Because if she gets a clean shot at you, you're dead. The other one, and I'm going to do a whole video on this, but I'll just mention it here. What we think of as romantic love is it's an illusion. You know, it's something that we create in our heads and we project upon the other person. The only kind of real love that you're going to have, if you ever have this love, is maybe the love you have for your children, because that's unconditional. That's a love where you would clearly give your life to protect your child, and you will support them in their endeavors, whatever they may be. And a lot of people don't even get that kind of love for their children. So in a relationship with a woman, especially one that you've met within the last few years, the likelihood that you're going to have some level of real love for them is almost zero. So don't fool yourself. You are enjoying a transactional relationship. You can like them a lot. You can have a strong affection for them. You can be very sexually, desirous of them. But the chances of you actually loving them is almost zero. So don't tell yourself that you do. Don't allow yourself to get into that state of limerence where you're just in this vague state of loveness. Because although it feels good, the price that you pay for that good feeling is way higher than what the feeling is worth. All right, you guys, that's what I got for you today. I certainly hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. So remember, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.